And happy later Wednesday to the world out there. Gentlemen, how's it going? We are the Hawkscast.net podcast, and we are a little late, but we're still excited to be here.
Sorry, it's that whole global time zone, international dateline thing.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, we are all in different locations, and one of us is in a totally different country.
Yeah.
Can you guess who?
So so your guys' time changes twice a year, right? I think that's coming up again or something.
It comes in November, so it's like super late now.
Okay, it's in November. Okay, so anyway, everybody around me remembers the fact that I do my podcast, and they, late season it's at 2 p.m. in the daytime on Thursday for me, and so everybody remembers it as 2 o'clock. So at the beginning of the season, it's at 1 o'clock for me. Because we don't change the time here. We don't do the daylight savings.
Why would you?
I kind of like it, to be honest, but that's a different. That's a different podcast. So anyway, like everybody around me all week for the last couple of weeks keeps saying, "Oh, you got your podcast at 2, and like the first couple of weeks, I was like, "No, it's at 1, But like, I guess subliminally or whatever, I keep hearing 2 p.m. So by this week, it was just in my head that today I had to do it at 2 p.m. And so. Yeah, I blew it.
And look,
sorry, everybody.
They were right. It's your 2 o'clock, your 2 p.m.
Now it is. I will somehow make it 2 p.m. So sorry about that.
They okie doked you.
Yeah. You got gaslit by your friends.
Yeah, and then as by an extension, so did you.
Tis true.
It was the old bring them in and push them out.
Exactly. Well, we are the Hawkscast.net podcast. I am Sam. You can find me on Twitter at SammyC521. With me is Zeb. Zeb, what's your Twitter handle?
At Zebulon Dak.
And Mr. Ross, what's your Twitter handle?
I don't know.
Well,
you're going to ask me that?
It's better than more, so it's on the website. Go check it out. You can also find us on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast. You can find the Hawkscast.net forum, Hawkscast.net, or Hawkscast forum on Twitter as well.
Also, you can find me on OnlyFans at onlyfans.com/babybear420.
It's a good show. I would highly recommend it if you've got the time and the funds.
It's expensive.
It is, but it's worth it.
Exactly.
Quality content is worth it. The podcast is free, but Zeb and his OnlyFans, it's going to cost you some coin. Speaking of coin, I feel bad for anyone who bet on the Seahawks to cover 6.5. I didn't bet real money, but in my pick'em and as our predictions, I picked the Seahawks to win, and we had a 7-point lead going into that fourth quarter. We had a
14-point lead.
We had a 14-point lead, like 3 minutes into the fourth quarter, but it's very, very.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I felt like that loss was like a slow death. Like I could see it coming. Seattle's offense and defense, they just couldn't do what they needed to do. I pinpoint the 60-yard run as the turning point, because at that point there's about 12 minutes left. If they had to march down the field, they might not have had enough time to get a second score. Obviously, it didn't help that we only took off like 1:20 each time we had the ball the last two times. But I'm not really sure how I'm like handling that loss. I don't know about you guys.
There's only one way I'm handling the loss, and that is, ironically, by looking to the Midwest. I'm looking at Green Bay week 1. I'm looking at how people reacted, and people are like, "Oh, see, Aaron Rodgers is mentally checked out. He's done." I was doing a little bit of it. I was telling somebody that, I think I was telling Tony, that there's a chance, like, by week 5, Aaron Rodgers isn't even starting anymore. Like, if he's just completely out of it. But as we sometimes bring up on this podcast, sometimes there's just those games. It's just one of those games. And, like, so Green Bay got killed in week 1, and we ripped them off, and like, oh, it's the end of the thing, and they're gone. But you know what? Apparently that was not true. And so this past week, Yeah, it was one of the worst. I keep reading different accounts, but it may be the worst fourth quarter collapse of all time for the Seahawks. I find that hard to believe because there's been but I guess you have to have a lead to be able to give up, a lead. So maybe it is. But I'm actually I think there's things to learn from it. I don't think it was completely just one of those things. There's a few lessons in there we'll talk about today. But mostly I'm just like, every team sometimes just has one of those games. Things just don't go right at the end, and so I'm trying not to read too much into. Like I said, I do think there's important lessons to be learned that we should talk about. But Green Bay's also 1-1, and they're not a horrible team. So let's go Hawks. Maybe.
Yeah, there are a lot of 1-1 teams that have a lot of high hopes. I think the one concern is that Seattle is the only team that has a loss in the NFC West. I mean, that's the thing that I really think about. Zeb, what about you? How are you handling that Titans loss this past Sunday?
I have been handling the loss with whiskey.
That is definitely a way to handle it for sure.
That's all I got.
Yeah. Yeah, the Seahawks suffer a stunning loss. It's the first home opener loss in the last 13 years, and it's actually the third straight home loss if we go back and look at the end of the 2020 season with the loss to the Rams in the playoffs, and then a loss at home as well. The Seahawks now regroup and travel to the Great Lakes State to face the Minnesota Vikings, who do need to do all they can to avoid a 0-3 start. Injuries are slowly starting to mount up in some key positions, but the core is there. But, they just could not sustain a defensive drive or an offensive drive down the stretch. There's a lot of questions if the Vikings are a Titans clone, a strong running game with play-action tendencies to two outstanding wide receivers. This is a HawksCast.net podcast, and Ross, we're going to jump into topic number one, and we've kind of approached this, but the question that I need to know is, did Seattle's explosive plays hurt themselves more than the Titans?
It's a weird question. I feel like I could have looked a little bit like Nostradamus because after week one and we were all rolling in ecstasy and praising things to the heavens and counting our blessings and booking tickets to the Super Bowl. And I didn't want to be I don't want to be Debbie Downer. Yes, I do. I love to be Debbie Downer sometimes, but there was this Debbie Downer point I chose not to make. And that was even though we won week one, the number of plays we ran was really low, and I mean the time of possession was really bad. And that's not really Pete Carroll football, and I don't know if we designed our defense this way. And then this week came up, and again somewhat because of the big plays, and sometimes because of a little bit of a sort of an intricate offense that isn't going to necessarily always work. We didn't use much time off the clock again. And it really means just sticking the defense out there for a long time. I don't know if we're built for that. We seem to have enough depth on the defensive line in theory to maybe deal with that, to have enough rotation. The guys are still somewhat fresh. But I'm not sure it's really, really true because by game two, some of those guys that looked like they were going to flash all year long in week one found out that was a week one deal. So I don't know. You're really leaving I think the time we only had the ball for 25 minutes in both games. So that's 10 extra minutes our defense is out there, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but that is a lot. And I think you can. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I don't know how much you can say it really, really hurt us. And I think it's really hard to quantify right now for me, but I think it's definitely something that warrants some thought. Some fans who always constantly want to have the cool passing game and throw need to think about, because do you remember when Chip Kelly was a thing? and he went over to Philadelphia that year. Remember?
Yeah.
And he was gonna like revolutionize the NFL, and like they get 90 plays a game, and and running that. And then the Seahawks went in there that year, and we thumped them. And we sort of judoed it, right? Like, we used what they wanted to do against them. Like, if you don't complete all those passes, then you're just doing 3 and outs, and you've run off 35 seconds, 45 seconds off the clock. And your defense is out there the whole time, and they're exhausted. And so you end up with kind of unbalanced, second half especially. And coincidentally, in both games, like third quarter last week, it wasn't very good. We rejuvenated in the fourth quarter. This game, second half, was... fourth quarter especially was a disaster, and I think our defense was exhausted because we're doing the cool stuff without doing the cool stuff. And if the cool stuff doesn't work, and if it does, but it's too fast, you score 2 huge quick drives, and the rest don't take any time off at all. God, I feel like I'm rambling here a bit, but I worry about putting some defensive guys in a bad position there. God, that was a rambling answer. I'm sorry.
I think it's a fair question, but Zeb, what about you? Do you think that all the explosive plays that Seattle had really hurt them more than the Titans themselves?
I mean, in the sense that Ross is talking about, we're not giving our defense a chance to rest, sure. But at the same time, those are how we scored our points. And we get 2 more of those and score points off of them, the game's out of reach, right? So in a vacuum, it's hard to say that the explosive plays actually hurt us more than the Titans. But the way the game went, with our kind of inability to run, to establish the run, and only hitting on those explosive plays, and then feeling like the team, probably Russell in particular, probably just kept looking for those explosive plays, and when they kind of disappeared and dried up, we weren't able to go to more of that ball control offense when we had a lead. So I don't know that the explosive plays themselves hurt us, but the idea that that's the only way we're going to be able to get down the field and score points definitely hurt us.
Yeah, it's interesting that this is a problem that we saw to a degree last year, where last year I feel like Pete Carroll knew that the defense was really bad. Like, they were going to have a lot of issues. So their goal was, we need to score as many points as possible. They didn't score as quickly as the Seahawks did. Just to give you an idea, the Seahawks had 5 scoring drives, a field goal and 4 touchdowns. Their longest drive, time-wise, was 2 minutes and 2 seconds, and that was 5 plays, and that got 57 yards, and that resulted in a field goal. Their shortest time of possession was the Chris Carson touchdown after the Alton Robinson strip sack and Kerry Harder recovered the ball. Chris Carson really scored twice on that drive because he got the touchdown and they ruled him out of bounds at 1, and they got on the next play. So there was literally no time for the Seahawks defense to rest. Their longest drive play-wise was the touchdown that they scored in under a minute. They scored 75 yards in 7 plays in 53 seconds for a touchdown. So what Seattle was able to do is, it's great for the score, but kind of what Ross alluded to is that it's really bad for the team because it doesn't give the team any sense of rhythm, any sense of control. There's no ability to really have that tempo that Shane Waldron has been preaching, something that Russ has been talking about all offseason. There's not that chance to get into any kind of rhythm because when you look at their other drives that ended in a punt, they had 4 3-and-outs and 2 drives that ran 8 and 9 plays respectively, and those took almost 5 minutes each. But if you look at the total amount of time that they had, they really held the ball for less than a third of that game, including overtime. That has huge impacts, and I think that it's not the explosive plays that hurt the Seahawks so much, but it's, like you guys said, it's that reliance on okay, well, we scored in 4 plays before, so we're going to do it again now. The Titans were a bad defense. They gave up those big plays because they played poorly. but it wasn't something that the Seahawks could just go to again and again and again. That's just unrealistic. So I think Seattle's explosive plays hurt to some degree, but it's not the plays that hurt. It's the fact that there was just no ability to establish rhythm. Chris Carson didn't get any touches. They ended up with a 2-to-1 pass to rush attempt in that game, and they were leading for a majority of that game, and they just weren't able or weren't willing to commit to the run in any fashion, which I think was a huge detriment to the team.
Yeah, I agree.
It's less that I mean, God, I feel like I've gone so far crazy that I'm now complaining about us scoring. But I mean, the explosive plays you can stomach if the rest of your drives still you want explosive plays, you want explosive scoring, you want even that threat out there. Like I want in the back of like this week's, I want the Vikings thinking about, I want Zimmer thinking about even Freddie Swain, who scored on a 60-something yard touchdown.
Yeah.
And oh my God, Lockett can do that, and Metcalf, we know we have to bottle up. I want them thinking about that. I don't want to say like I think those are bad ideas, but if you're gonna do that, then you better make sure your other drives, you better complete those passes, Russ. Like you're the highest paid quarterback in the NFL this year. And, it's really cheap to blame play calling sometimes. I mean, it wasn't great play calling, but the fact is, if the dude gets open and you throw the ball and it's in his hands and he catches it, then we get the first down, and, like, that can happen. If you're going to be the guy, then you have to be the guy. You have to matriculate down the field on your other drives. You can't have that's a lethal combination, in my opinion, to have the 1 or 2 or 4 play drives and score on 60-yard bombs, and then all your other drives are 3 and outs. Now you're asking for trouble.
Yeah.
And so you better like be aware of that with your play calling. Even like, I don't want to do run, pass. But you know what? Maybe you do run, and then run. And let like Trey Flowers, who really needs it, like, to catch his breath.
Yeah.
It's a bad combination, isn't it?
Real quick, shout out to Birdfinger and to Tony on the Twitch chat. Tony says, the less Trey Flowers on the field, the better. And he said the Seahawks cooked it. Birdfinger says, hey now, easy with that cooked it nonsense. And Tony replies, both my brothers are kooks, but I know Coogan when I see it. So there was definitely a lot of errors on the Seahawks side. We're going to move ahead real quick, but final question. When the Titans scored their final touchdown and they had the chance to go for the tie with the point after or to go for 2, were you surprised that Mike Vrabel didn't go for the 2-pointer and just win in regulation?
Not at all.
You thought going for the tie was the better decision?
I mean, like, when you're playing on Madden and when you're doing math, that's the choice to make, and it's really manly, and every once in a while when somebody does it, it feels really super hyper cool. But when your job is on the line, and if you don't take the safe play and it backfires on you, now, like, it's your job that you start worrying about in your income. It's a different, and, like, your reputation, and, like, you got to get another job at some point as well. They're going to be looking at that. I mean, I think once you become a head coach, just like when you become a president of a company or president of the United States, it's the position itself makes you more conservative.
Right. Zed, what about you? If you're Mike Vrabel, do you make that call and go for 2, or do you just take the point after?
I mean, I probably kick it, but I did think for at least a moment that he was going to possibly go for 2.
Right.
And I don't blame him.
If there's someday an owner who's also the head coach and the GM, then we can expect more of that.
Right.
But like, again, like if you're an employee, it's just so hard to do, I think.
Winning in football is so valuable. I understand the point you're saying, Ross, where winning in football is so valuable. You can't risk it for like illogical emotion or rhetoric. You're a head coach for a reason. You can have emotion but you really
It's
need
funny
to go
because
and
it's
making like the surest decisions at all time.
But actually, it's sort of opposite of that. It's all about perception because logically, I mean, it's actually a really, really good argument because if you do just kick it, now you're almost going on and it's Russell Wilson on the other side. Like, you're really kind of like you're like putting things into chance. It's just going to be a coin toss. But if I trust my players to get the 2 points right here, we can win the game right here. And statistically, it's a 50-50 kind of deal anyway. But you get to control it rather than it being random, right?
Right.
You go for the 2-point conversion, you get it. I think 2-point conversions make it like 55% of the time, so it's slightly better for you. But it's perceived. It's not the actual reality that matters. It's perceived as, oh my God, you could have just gotten the tie and then gone into overtime and then tried to win it there. Why did you do such a risky play and then you blew it? You always want to people have a tendency to want to put the loss off to the last minute. If you're going to lose, make it go on as long as possible.
Right.
It's not actually scientifically or mathematically correct. It just feels like what you're supposed to do, and that really matters. Like, and you're sitting there like going, I mean, I'm stuck in the same position. Like, I'm not really going into too much details about my job, but like this week I have to make a decision on a policy change that all the math says I should do. But I'm just really, really worried that it's going to backfire because people are going to perceive it wrong.
Just got to show them the numbers.
Yeah, but people are dumb.
Get out that pie sheet, that pie chart.
People are dumb, man. People don't understand their own self-interest. It's hard.
I hear you. All right, well, we're going to move on to topic number 2. And Zeb, I need to know from you, what's more likely to get fixed? What's least likely to get fixed? We're talking about penalties. We're talking about offensive consistency. We're talking about defensive consistency. What do you think is likely to happen in this next game? What do you think is not likely to be fixed?
Well, so far, the only thing I'm willing to admit is a problem is the penalties. Because one bad game doesn't necessarily equal problem yet. So I'm hoping that we're going to see a lot more offensive and defensive consistency going forward. So I'm going to go with the penalties, which we have not been the best at this under Pete Carroll. We tend to be high on the list of teams in the league when it comes to penalties under him. We play a little bit undisciplined. It's not like the Holmgren years where it was, like running the army, running the military, right? Everybody knew exactly what they had to do. Under Pete Carroll, things are a lot looser. And we got guys like DK who, it's funny, he's good at getting in people's heads and drawing those penalties, but he also tends to lose it himself a little bit and commit the penalties. I thought the one this weekend was a little bit interesting. I didn't really see what was necessarily his fault and how he got called on that penalty, but I mean, the holding was obvious, but I think that's important. I think those penalties really hurt us against the Titans, and almost to the point where maybe the outcome is different if we don't commit 2 or 3 of those. You know what I mean? It was that close. So I expect the offense and defense to play a little more consistent, offense in particular, but I hope that we're able to get those penalties under wraps this week.
Do you feel that there is, of those 3, the least likely to get fixed? I mean, you kind of mentioned the offense, but what is it about the offense that you are maybe unsure about?
I think the problem with the offense is it's a long-term problem. I don't know that this is something that's going to change, and I don't see Russell's willingness or ability to take the smaller play when it's there and always wanting to go big. I think that's something we kind of just have to deal with. That's the way he is. It's not necessarily a terrible thing. It's kind of a feast or famine situation, and oftentimes for us it's been feast. So I'm not mad about it, but that's something that I don't see. I think people keep hoping it's going to change, and I don't think it's going to change.
Ross, what about you? If you're looking at these 3 options, penalties, offensive consistency, defensive consistency, what do you think is likely to get fixed and what's not?
First, let me say I really hope that Zeb is right, because He said maybe things are different if we have some of those players. I think it's pretty obvious. We spotted them in total 100 yards. Either we moved ourselves back.
Not only 100 yards, that 100 yards of accepted penalties.
Right, and then plus, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, they got 500 yards of offense, plus we gave them another 100 yards. I mean, that doesn't sound very good. It's a 100-yard field. We gave them the length of the field.
And in terrible moments, too, in the wrong moments to have those penalties.
Yeah. I mean, there were some really boneheaded plays out there. Now, do I think that's the most likely to be fixed? Some of the absolute boneheaded stuff, maybe. I think players are going to get used to the fact that this taunting penalty is there. And you know what? Just rotate your body 90 degrees. And then they're not going to call it. They refuse to just say it plainly, but it's pretty obvious looking at what's been penalized in the first 2 weeks and what hasn't been. Don't have the guy who just made the play or didn't make the play or who you made the play against. Don't put him like in your front 90, 120 degrees, right? Face the fans, face your coach, face your team captain, face anybody except for the dude who was involved in the play.
Can I just interrupt real quick? I want to tell you that every time a quarterback gets sacked, I am worried that the defender that gets a sack is going to get a counting play. Like, he's going to sack the quarterback, get a strip sack, whatever, and he's going to just be excited. That player's just going to be pumped up as he should be, and the quarterback's just like in the corner of his eye, and there's just going to be some ref that flags the play. Yep. That's my concern, and I literally thought that multiple times in that game.
I totally agree. Right? You can just see, because that's especially sometimes people like taunting in really dumb situations, but you make a sack in today's NFL where they're hard to get, you should be excited, but it just has to sort of become ingrained in you. Make the sack, stand up, rotate 90 degrees to your left or your right, and then roll your stomach or do your thing or put on your dance or whatever it is you're going to do for us. Just remember, rotate 90 degrees first. Then do it, please. I don't know how easy it is to make that, that's a conscious thing during a pretty emotional time. So I don't know if that's going to be fixed. The other stuff, we're a Pete Carroll team. Like I said, we're not that disciplined. It's not really like that's not in our wheelhouse. So I'm not holding my breath on. I just want penalties to be down to like 60 yards, not 150. Right? We can overcome 50.
That's a good game. If we're under 5 penalties or under 50 yards, it's a good game.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, I can handle that. That's just that's the price you pay. That's the Pete Carroll experience, right? Cool. I think actually the offensive stuff is more likely to be fixed. I feel like the more people get used to Shane. I mean, I wrote this on our website. Go check that out. I wrote that maybe there was a bit of like so much focus on week 1. Oh my God, it's my premiere, it's my debut, and Shane out there and he nailed it. And so there might have been just like a little bit less time spent on week 2, or a little bit fewer ideas, and just like a little bit of, phew, I got past that main exam, I don't care about the next week's quiz kind of thing going on. I feel like, and also like with Russell Wilson being in there with him, getting more of it, the more time you spend in it, the more comfortable it's going to be. It's not going to be immediately perfect. But I think like this week, there'll be more opportunities to let Shane cook and let him understand, dude, don't go away from those tight end screens. Don't go away from the jet sweeps just because Eskridge isn't there and it's not really Swain's thing, but Penny Hart should be back this week, I think, and he can do that. That's something he can do. Just run a jet sweep to like Metcalf. Let's see what that looks like. And don't forget to like flood routes. Don't forget, there was all sorts of things that we did week 1 and we talked about and spent time on. And I actually sent you guys messages with screen captures. There's all kinds of stuff we were doing week 1, which all week 2 it looked like they gave Shoddy his job back, didn't it? Like there wasn't any difference.
Yeah.
And like for one play they like bevel, like you could call a play apparently over the phone. Like, dude, it's 3rd and 3 and we really, really, really need to convert. So let's throw up 40 yards down the field. Yeah. Wait, what? I mean, there's a time I never was the guy to criticize those plays in the past all the time because there is a time and place for that, right? If any you could catch people off guard, but game on the line, 3rd and 3, and Russell Wilson's your quarterback. That's like and Shane Waldron's supposed to be your offensive quarterback. Like, here's the time for the naked bootleg, or here's the time for like 3 tight end flood or something. Yeah. Not, dude, just toss it, just throw it. Like, we need to win the game. There's only 17 of these suckers. Yeah, I think week 3 we come back and Shane regroups. I love to say Shane, as you can tell. I feel like I know the guy. Anyway, I think that's actually a high possibility that gets corrected this week.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you guys, but just to add some opportunity, I'm going to say what's likely to get fixed. I actually thought the defense played okay in spots. Like, if you look at like what they did, they limited a lot of limited passing explosive plays. There was the big bomb to Julio and obviously the big 60-yard run by Derrick Henry. But for the most part, what Seattle was doing was preventing the big play. So defensive-wise, they were not able to get home later in the match. But what they were doing is they were forcing, Ryan Tannehill to just take those 5 yards up the middle because they were protecting deep and they were trying to protect against the run. So there's a lot that I thought defensively they were doing okay. The problem with it is that they were not able to get home. And we'll talk about that with Jamal Adams and kind of like the pass rush. That's something I feel like can get improved because we saw that against a better offensive line with the Colts, but we weren't able to see that with the Titans. So I'm hoping that the defensive consistency will be a little bit better. I am worried about the offensive consistency a little bit because we've been talking about, and Pete has been talking about, a balanced offense. And we went from a game where it was a little bit more rush heavy to this game where they were like just passing, and they ended up at a 2-to-1 ratio of pass attempts to rush attempts. And they were leading 90% of that game, and they were not able to run the ball effectively or in any fashion. So I'm really concerned about the offense because we saw almost a total change in what the offense was against the Colts versus this Titans team. And there was no jet sweep. Tight ends were not involved at all. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 targets to the tight end. Will Dissly didn't make an appearance. There wasn't a tight end screen. Every time they ran motion, they never gave the ball to the motion guy. They just continued to run up the middle, and the motion guy basically just ran himself out of play. He was never targeted, never got the ball. Just seemed like a complete waste. And then they just stopped doing it, and then they couldn't do anything. Obviously, they had limited number of snaps because they kept getting 3 and outs. But that is my concern. My concern is that Shane Waldron had the best game of his life week 1, and we're not going to see anything better. I want to be wrong, but this game just looked really bad. All those big explosive plays, that's just because the Titans have a bad defense, but they weren't bad every single time, which is why we had so many 3 and outs. That is my concern, and I hope I'm wrong.
To this layman's eyes, it looked like a completely different offense than we saw in week 1. Week 1, they did all this cool stuff, and we were all excited. Ooh, look, the tight ends are involved. Look at the crazy motions. Look at all this, And then this week, it was like watching the old Bevel and Shoddy offenses again. It seemed like a completely different offense to me.
Do you have access to all 22?
I don't. I could. I can. But I don't. I just don't. I don't ever dig in that deep.
Don't do it this week. I was going to say, because as bad as it looked during the game or on the standard replay, if you go watch the all 22, it's worse.
Worse in what way? Is that a Russ thing? Where
you're thinking like when you watch the game, like, well, maybe out of view, like other stuff's happening, right? But no, like you watch the all 22, and like it's not just that they weren't clearing routes on stuff that's on your TV screen, like. Even out of view, like there still isn't like Disley doing anything interesting. There still isn't like there isn't somebody like running like a stick route to clear out something underneath. Like they're not like Zeb just said, stuff that was happening and super obvious in week one when you watch like the replay, even a normal replay. Like I said, I sent you guys screenshots, right?
Yeah.
Like all that stuff's going on. Like, oh, they're playing cover 2 and it's not Tampa 2, so the middle linebacker's not going to bail on it. So run this dude out and then run an out route, and then that's going to clear Lockett down the middle in the seam route. Cool, let's do that. So like week 2, at first I thought, okay, like it didn't look like that the same, but maybe it's maybe some of it's still going on. It's just out of view. Maybe like on the other side of the thing, maybe Gerald Everett really was running a tight end screen route, or maybe Disley did something cool on the other side. I just didn't get to see it, right? Or maybe the wide receivers were running routes that would clear things out, and maybe Russ just didn't throw there because he didn't have time to go through progression. No. You go watch the all 22, and it's all like super standard, like high school routes. Like we're back to shoddy. I don't understand. Like I know they've kept a huge amount of like the playbook. Like there's an overlap. They didn't just throw it out. And because that's cool, because Shoddy did do lots of good things, and he really did understand like what Russ and what Metcalf and what Lockett do really well. So you do want to keep some of it. But what we did so awesome in week 1 was you take what they do well and that stuff, and then you modify it. Instead of you get Lockett open by not just letting him run what he runs really well. But then you do run Gerald Everett as a threat, but then have him break after 15 to the right, and that draws off the safety. And the other safety has already rolled to Metcalf, so now the seam's even bigger. And there's none of that in week 2, and I don't know why.
Yeah. We're gonna push ahead, and we're gonna go to topic number 3. Ross, I need to know: is Adams the Russ of the defense? A guy so unique you don't know how to use him.
I don't know if I buy I don't know if I buy the scenario of the question, but he's difficult. Like I said, this goes back to during the preseason. I said if you're going to have Adams and you're going to pay him that, then you have to have the pieces that let you use him, and they don't. And also, they're so concerned. Like, remember, like all off season, like Pete Carroll's like, we're going to be using Adams in different ways. He's not going to just be the blitzer. He's not going to just be the blitzer. Well, yeah, but like that is what he's best at. How about we let him do that occasionally? Like week 1, he got to do one, but it was called back because of a holding or something. But like let him do it sometimes, right? Like, come on. But he didn't rate out. I don't really put huge stock is like some people do in PFF, Pro Football Focus's player ratings. I really don't, because you don't know what the play call was. So what are you doing? But anyway, he didn't rate particularly well. If you do take stock of it, his rating was like a 66.4, 66.3. By comparison, like Puna Ford was like 82.6 or something. Adams, I don't think had a great game. They're allowing him to freelance. It looks like it's on purpose, otherwise they would have criticized him. So he's allowed to freelance, and they're trying to use him different ways. I think they do know how to use him. They just refuse to do it because they want to look more like sexy. They want to have a say, like, don't just blitz Adams. He can do other stuff. Dude, he's a strong safety. Blitz him or sit him in the middle. Whatever. Yeah.
Zeb, what about you? You're on a chat where there's a lot of people that have a lot of issues with Russ, and I feel like the conversations about Adams, especially with his contract, as Ross alluded to, has started to like make people a little bit more critical. There were definitely a lot of articles, a lot of tweets, a lot of concerns about Jamal Adams. Is this guy so unique that the Seahawks don't know how to use him?
I hope they know how to use him, and it's just not, working fully as well as it could be. I mean, I think Ross is right. His strengths are blitzing, and We need to work the middle of the field. We don't want him out there covering guys deep and stuff like that. That's not what he's good at. But he did have, like I said, I haven't watched the All-22, but it looked to me like he had a lot of opportunities to rush the quarterback this last weekend, and it just didn't seem like he was landing. He wasn't getting that pressure. I don't think he got any real pressure. I don't think he hit the quarterback at all.
I think he got credited with one hurry, but do you know one reason why I think he was kind of nullified?
Why is that?
Is because they had fucking Derrick Henry pass blocking, and that guy is like a 500 pounds bigger and taller than everyone else. So
for sure, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think that Jamal Adams is a mismatch in most situations, but I think they neutralized him. Again, it's one game, so we got a lot of season left to get that worked out, and I think he's going to do some really good stuff. We're going to get our money's worth out of him, but unfortunately, this last weekend was not a great example of his skill set.
Yeah, I think whenever you have a player that is one of the highest paid at its position, it's one of the highest paid members of the team, expectations are always going to be high, rightfully so. You don't give money to that kind of person unless they are so good at what they do. Russ attracts a lot of attention for his play, for his off-the-field lifestyle, for his Instagram, for his corniness, for all kinds of things. Jamal Adams is a very interesting character, but I don't think anyone has any concerns about who he is off of the field. Everyone kind of assumes that he's kind of the same guy. Russ, there is concerns that he's not, and he's too phony, blah, 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 blah. But with Adams, I do think there is that certain element that, as you both said, it's kind of a boom or bust. He's a player that disappears, which, on defense is okay, because as long as he's not making a mistake, it's okay. So you don't need him to show up. You assume he was doing his job, which is why he wasn't involved with the play. But this game in particular, it was that 60-yard touchdown that really changed the game. And there's a lot of opinions about what was Jamal Adams' responsibility. Pete Carroll said in the press conference after the game and afterwards that, the Seahawks were too aggressive, that, they were not contained, they were not playing sound defense. And it wasn't just Jamal Adams on that play, it was Trey Flowers, Tony's favorite guy, that also failed to contain on that 60-yard run. So Matty Brown, he has an article about it. It's Seahawks Maybe if you're interested. It's got some really good detail on it. But I think that play kind of just shows, especially to fans, like, hey, if you're going to be paid this much, if you're going to draw all this attention, you need to be excellent all the time. Your blemishes, your failures are just magnified. And I think that's what we saw in that game, which is why he's drawing the ire of so many people. So to a degree, he is kind of the Russ of the defense in the fact that he's going to be a lightning rod for controversy, because expectations are through the roof for a guy that just got paid, that set an NFL record for sacks by a secondary, and he hasn't hit yet. And I think there are a lot of people that are waiting for that.
I agree. I get what you're saying. I'm afraid that it may come off slightly wrong to some people. I think it's important to emphasize, like, it's not that he's being unfairly microscoped or something because of the pay. It's you pay that guy because they make those plays. Like, it's not unfair, right? Like,
no, I'll make that perfectly clear. When you are paid that much, you need to be as close to perfection as possible. You cannot make those mistakes. So
exactly. So like
it draws attention, and it's
right.
It draws attention because of your play, but your failures are also more magnified as well.
Yeah, I mean, on that play where, I mean, I didn't see the Matty Brown article. I think, are you talking about the play where some people want to blame Flowers and some people want to blame Adams, and it's after the receiver goes in motion?
Yeah, so Matty breaks this down, and again, I'm not a big X and O's guy, but essentially what happens is there's a couple things. So they move their wide receiver further in, so that draws in Adams, that draws in Trey Flowers. Once they snap the ball, Jamal shoots his gap, and he's like halfway into the backfield, but he's so aggressive that the wide receiver is basically able to push him out of the play, and then Derrick Henry cuts back to his left, and the only person that's there is Trey Flowers, and Trey Flowers didn't fill the gap that Adams basically left. And because of that, it's basically just this wide open one-on-one with Derrick Henry with the big angle and the speed and the ability to kind of push him down. And Quandre's not there to rotate fast enough, and Derrick Henry is like sneaky fast, and he runs down the field for 60 yards.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the issues I think on that is like there's a late wide receiver in motion, and that screws up the gaps, I think. And I think that Adams, it's not really like, I don't think Flowers knew that Adams was going to take that gap and to take that aggressive. So I think that was freelancing, but I also think it's what they're allowing him to do. So if you have a guy out there just saying we're giving this much money to you, and because of that, also we know you like to do this, and we're going to let you do that because that's part of your game. Oh man, that's gonna happen, I guess. That's the thing; you can't guess wrong. And if you're gonna freelance, you better make the play.
Yeah.
Because if not, especially in that case, a little bit bad luck. A little bit bad luck in the fact that again, like the run fit becomes less obvious. I think. I mean, you're a paid professional, but Trey Flowers isn't getting $19 million.
Right.
And I gotta say, Quandre Diggs on that play, dude, you're asking for more money. Here's your chance, man. You wanted more money. You wanted more money this year. They didn't give it to you. They reworked something a bit, it looks like. But you want the big contract. You want to be next in line. You're the free safety. You're the last dude. There shouldn't be any 60-yard runs this year. That's your job.
Yeah.
That's your job. You're a Pro Bowl player. You want to be All-Pro, and you want, presumably, a big pay raise, probably double what you're making. Sorry, free safeties aren't appreciated in the world. You probably want 10. And you're worth it. You're worth it, but you got to make every play then on the back end. That's how you get paid. You don't get paid by going, well, yeah, but that guy did that, and you were the free safety. Read it right. Do it right.
Yep.
I'm running out of patience, like Pete Carroll.
Final thoughts on Jamal Adams.
Do your job.
All right.
Earn your money.
We're going to see some good stuff out of him this year.
I thought so. I'm out here like I've got his jersey on like in my cart.
Ross is just hovering his mouse over the buy button and just like, come on, give me that sack.
You make that play, and I've bought your jersey, and I think the players get a certain percentage of that. Even, dude, you could have had $5 right there. I know you want $5. $19 million and $5.
All right, let's move on to our final topic of the show, and that is topic number 4: the Minnesota Vikings. Zeb, the Vikings were 2 field goals away from being 2-0. Instead, they're 0-2. Should the Seahawks be worried? We talked about this last week. Is it like bad to be facing a team that could be having a huge string of losses? That's what we're seeing with the Vikings. Are you and should the Seahawks be worried?
I don't like to use the word worried, but obviously, yeah, they're, like you said, field goals away from being undefeated. They're a good team. You know, it's Kirk Cousins, so we all know who his limitations are. But they're not a bad squad, and yeah, they want to win, and they're probably pretty upset that they haven't. So I think we'll probably we're going to get the best of them. You know, and like last week, we're going into a game that we have a pretty long win streak against. We've won 8 in a row against the Vikings, and in fact, the Pete Carroll Seahawks have never lost to the Vikings, including the playoff game. So,
yeah, they're like 4-0 against Kirk Cousins in the regular season, and it's like 5-0 against them, including the playoffs.
Yeah. Our last loss against the Vikings was 2009, and we know what Seahawks team that was. Oof. It wasn't a good one.
Oof, that's a bad reminder.
Yeah. So, and we got all these little things. Russ is still looking for his 100th win, which they made a big deal about, and so we got some kind of humps to get over here, stats wise, numbers wise. But I think that these are pretty well matched teams, and I think it's going to be a good game.
Is there anything you think about with the Vikings, with the Dalvin Cook, with the Justin Jefferson, with the Adam Thielen, with the Kirk Cousins that makes you pause and say, ooh, I'm worried about this, or I'm concerned about that?
What I'm concerned about with them, which we saw last week against the Titans, was their virtually unlimited success throwing underneath to the running back. Dalvin Cook he's an explosive guy. So he's the kind of guy that if they can get him the ball in space underneath, he might make something happen. So I love that we're working to not give up the big play, but we gave up so much underneath that they were just able to grind us, and then with a guy like Henry, that was ultimately too much for us. Dalvin Cook presents a different issue, but he's the kind of guy, if they can get in a rhythm and they can get him the ball 20 to 25 times, he's probably going to do some damage. So we better play our cards right.
Russ, how are you feeling about the Seahawks going to Minnesota, facing that offense, facing Kirk Cousins, facing Dalvin Cook?
Super awesome. No, I don't know, man. Like, they've 2 years in a row, they seem to have like the hot rookie wide receiver, Osborne. KJ Osborne seems to be on a roll, and Jefferson's a weapon, and Thielen, who I kind of thought he was done. He was so hurt and everything. I thought he was done. Didn't other people think he was kind of done? No, just me.
I mean, I wouldn't have drafted him. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, he was off my board in fantasy because I don't want him getting there, and I just thought that dude was done, but he's not done. They got Dalvin Cook and Kirk Cousins, who's, I mean, he's all right. I mean, we constantly kind of down on that dude, but that dude's made a pretty good career after being drafted in a really awkward situation. And he's probably taught NFL players how to play the franchise tag game as well. So, smart dude. Their defense struggled last year, and they haven't been lights out. Obviously, this year they're 0-2, and they gave up a lot of points. But they've got playmakers. And they brought in some new people. Like, they were still running a 4-3, but they've got a lot of coaches and personnel that lets them kind of go into a 4-2-5. Almost base sometimes. Another cornerback taking over for a linebacker. I'm not feeling super confident. They've got a lot of weapons we're going to have to neutralize. This is going to be one of those things, like salary cap evens out the talent level to a certain degree. It's all about who your quarterback is. We got a better quarterback. And does your coaching staff bring it this time? Your play calling and playbook you're using this week. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be an interesting challenge. I think it's going to be close. We're really good on the road these days, so I'm not worried about that at all, but it's going to be close.
So what's crazy is, even though it's a road game, it's not a 10 a.m. game. It's a 1 p.m. West Coast game, so that's kind of weird.
5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Good old 5 a.m. for Mr. International there. So the Vikings have lost 5 games in a row, if you count the preseason. They lost 3 points to Cincinnati. They lost by 1 point to Arizona because Arizona, their kicker missed a field goal. So it wasn't Blair Walsh, but another Vikings kicker missed a field goal. So just, kind of their luck. I listened to the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast, which is Michael Sean Dugar and Christopher Kidd. They had the athletic writer for Minnesota come in, and it was really interesting to hear him talk about the Vikings. He says, they've got these studs. They've got, Thielen. They've got Jefferson. They've got Osborne. They've got Dalvin Cook. And they got Kirk Cousins. Like, he did not sound very super high on Cousins. And the reason why is he said that Kirk Cousins is a quarterback that's going to take whatever the defense gives him. If you give him the 5 yards underneath, he's going to go 5 yards underneath. If you give him, only looks deep, he's going to go deep. And what it seems like teams have found is, if you force Kirk Cousins to just matriculate down the field, he'll score, but it takes him so long that they run out of time. So I almost feel as if that's like almost what Pete wants the Vikings to be. He was going to, instead of it being a big game and a big blowout, it's going to be a game that Pete wants to be close, and he wants to just we'll just have the ball with the in the last 2 minutes, and we'll just go down the field and we'll score, kind of like what they did last year on the Monday night game. And that was a game that Seattle was down 0-13 at the half at home. I think there is definitely a lot to make you be concerned about this Vikings team. Not that I think they're like all worlders, but they're a playoff contender. But what I'm worried about is we can't establish the run because Mike Zimmer is going to want to stop the Seahawks, and rather than attacking their weakness and setting Seattle up for success by taking advantage of their old and slow secondary, is that we're going to go back to just trying to run the ball and control clock rather than taking advantage of what really should be there, which is maybe shorter pass plays, more screen plays, a tight end screen, more rollouts, sprint right kind of stuff. I feel like that's how we should be able to run, but because the loss against the Titans was so bad, I think we're going to overcommit to the run regardless of its success, and we're going to have this game be closer than it really should be. Because on paper, I think the Seahawks are a much better team. Our receivers are better. Our quarterback is better. I think our defense is better. I don't know if and even our corners are a little bit better than theirs because their corners are apparently slow and old. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm worried that because of that loss to the Titans, we are going to double down on old style, Pete Carroll style Seahawks. We're going to run, and we're going to keep the game close and just hope that we get the ball at the final few minutes to win it, in the last second. That is what I am worried about.
All fair.
Yeah. But we'll see.
We'll see, all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think. Mike Zimmer has been with the Vikings for 6 or 7 years now, and dude's never the closest he's come to success is, the quarterback that he jettisoned right away because they wanted to get Kirk Cousins instead. Case Keenum, he took him all the way to the NFC Championship game, and
I did. And then he ejected that dude.
Yeah, and we're like, no, we're good. We want this guaranteed contract for this quarterback who's never won a playoff game, doesn't win in prime time, has a losing record against teams that are above 500, and his contract's guaranteed. Oh, and by the way, he doesn't want to get vaccinated. This is the guy we're gonna roll with.
The weirdest thing, that dude, he has a different protocol, so he gets you put yourself in. Anyway.
That's the old topic. We've covered that, but yeah, that is this team. If I would have to say that there is one thing I am concerned about, it is going to be if Mike Zimmer decides that he's going to run the ball 40 times a game and Seattle just gets gassed again. That's my concern.
Well, Dalvin Cook isn't completely healthy.
He is not.
So there's that.
And he got injured the last time he played Seattle too.
Yeah. On defense, at left cornerback, they're starting Patrick Peterson like it's 2012, dude.
Yeah, I love that matchup for Lockett or DK. That seems like a great matchup for them to just take advantage of.
It does feel like they don't really have the horses on defense to run with our wide receivers. They're starting Patrick Peterson and Bashawn Breeland, and their linebackers are good, but they're kind of aging, and I don't...
Yeah, I mean, if this was the 2019 Vikings, I'd be much more afraid of their defense. Daniel Hunter is a great defensive end, but Harrison Smith is not fast. He's not... Xavier Woods was a great corner, but that was, again, multiple years ago. None of these guys are awful.
How I feel about just move the cornerback to free safety.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the same thing. No, shut the... Oh.
Hey, Charles Woodson did it. Anyone could do it, right? He's a Hall of Famer.
I mean, there are people who can do it, but the disrespect. But seriously, they've got Patrick Peterson on defense. They've got Everson Griffin. If we slip back to 2016, we're in trouble.
Right.
Anthony Barr's out there, like running around. Probably, Doc Brown, whatever. Like, Back to the Future, dude. Sheldon Richardson's there. Like, they have Sheldon Richardson, Patrick Peterson, Everson Griffin. Like, I don't understand. Like, does Zimmer have a calendar?
Everson Griffin has been in this league for 12 years.
I mean, Sheldon Richardson and Everson Griffin, like, on your defensive line, like, you are super set in 2017, right?
Yeah. Harrison Smith has been in the league for 10 years. Patrick Peterson, 11 years. Their other starting corner has been in the league for 8 years. I mean, these are some old dudes for the secondary.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere. I mean, like, to be honest, Sheldon Richardson's not starting. He's their depth, and Everson Griffin's not starting apparently. But I think they kind of rely on him for sacks. But
right,
like I don't know if that's a really smart move. So
yeah, well, we'll see. Final thoughts on the Vikings before we get to our predictions.
Hell with them.
1 to 10. How good is Kirk Cousins?
7. He's like he's a tier 3 quarterback. He's
6.5.
For the amount of money they're paying him and the age that he is, he's grossly overpaid. But he's a quarterback, so he automatically makes 25% more money than he should.
I wonder, I don't know if you guys will get this, but he might be the new Steve DeBerg. Steve DeBerg was like a quarterback in the 70s and 80s, and he was good enough, like you think you have a quarterback, so you don't really replace him. But like he was just good enough to start, but not good enough to win. And so you would keep him. He was like the original coach killer. You kept him for a couple of years, and then you realized, oh God, actually I do have to get another quarterback. Like he was like arguably why the 49ers eventually got Joe Montana. Like he was starting before Joe Montana. He was with the Broncos, and they were like, "Oh God, we got to go somewhere else." Eventually, they ended up a few years down the road with Elway. He like went town to town, team to team, like losing them games, but looking okay and having okay stats. Just losing the game for everybody everywhere he goes. So I feel like Kirk Cousins like that. He can't beat a winning team, right? He's always good in numbers, but he's not a winner. Sorry. I mean, who am I to say that? But he doesn't like win in the NFL, the big stuff, right?
I think that's not to go too in depth, but Kirk Cousins is the example of if that's your quarterback, that's the quarterback you should move on from, because you pay him all that money, especially, and it's also guaranteed money, and you still can't win, and there's still issues, there's still problems, there's still hurdles that you need to overcome. You need to find a better way to spend that money.
But he's just good enough that when we discuss whether you pay Russell Wilson and you talk about like, oh, it's so hard to find a quarterback who can, quarterback's a really hard position to play. And he can play the position. He can throw the ball downfield, and he can, so many quarterbacks can't make successful downfield throws, and he can. So if you need to believe it, he's like a mirage. You think you have your franchise quarterback right there. Look at him. But then you get up close and he just disappears.
Kirk Cousins is a career 500 player. When he was at Washington and his 4 years in Minnesota, he's 25, 23, and 1 in 49 games.
He's just one of those tweener dudes. Like he's not a Rick Meyer who can hang around for 15 years just being the backup because he apparently is better than a backup. But like you said, he's a 500 starter. But if your franchise is happy being a 500 team, then, more power to you.
Yeah, I mean...
Okay, enough clear cash to Cousins bashing, sorry.
All right. And also, I apologize. He actually does have a win in the playoffs.
He has one. He got it 2 or 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, he got it in 2019 against the Saints. It was that crazy, almost overtime win where it was just like a throw down the sideline and the Saints took himself out of the play. Yeah.
The cornerback just no situational awareness.
Yeah.
Trying to make the wrong play there.
Yeah. But yeah. So that's our topics for today. We got some predictions for you. So to recap, we had all predicted the Seahawks to win last week. Ross had a 35-20 win. Zeb had a 31-24 win. I had a 28-15 win. None of us had the Titans scoring 30, let alone 33. So I think by default, Ross, you won because you projected the Titans to have the most points at 20. So you take week 2.
That's great. I feel really happy with that win.
And as the winner, we're going to start you off with predictions. What is going to be the final score between the Seahawks and the Vikings?
38-31. Get your popcorn. Sorry, Seahawks.
Seahawks 38-31. Okay.
Yeah.
Zeb, what about you? Who do you have winning this game?
Seahawks 27-24.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be a little bit with Zeb. I think it's going to be a little bit scoring affair. I do have the Seahawks kind of squeaking this one out. You said 27-24?
Yeah.
Oof, that's a good
He's
score.
gonna prices right, you man. You should have gone last.
I'm going to go... I'm going to go 28-21. So I'm going to score 1 point more than you, and I'm going to make it so that the Vikings can't score a field goal because their kicker's broken.
That's fair.
Ross, over under 15.5 touches for one Mr. Chris Carson.
I feel like we really want to pass on this defense. They got their under.
Yeah. Zeb, 15.5 touches, over under for Chris Carson.
Over.
I mean, I feel like I'm kind of with Ross. I feel like they need to be passing. Maybe Chris can get a few of those looks, but I just don't know. With how Mike Zimmer wants to play on defense, he's like a Pete Carroll really wants to like take away the run game. I kind of feel like they need to not use Chris Carson, which kind of like goes against what they'll probably do, but I'm going to go under as well. Ross, over under 23.5 touches for Dalvin Cook.
I better be under. That dude's like rushing 30 times. That means things went horribly wrong.
Yeah, I'm going under too because it's got to be under, or else we're in tough shape.
Well, but still.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over, and I think what's gonna happen is he is going to be felt in the passing game. I think that, like the guy Chad from Minnesota Athletic, is that Dalvin Cook is going to get a lot of touches underneath, and it'll be up to Bobby and Jordan Brooks and to Jamal to try and contain him.
I mean, I think with some like, holy crap, like everybody was like, oh my God, Bobby Wagner got 20 tackles last game, but like 6 of those were because he's not great in coverage, and he just kept letting Derrick Henry catch 5-yard, in the middle of the field passes over and over and over again.
That was the game that I think Seattle really missed KJ.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was weird. So, and I mean, it was funny because in a subtle way, and people pointed this out, maybe Pete Carroll kind of called that out a little bit. As far as as close as he'll come to like getting down on a player in public.
Yeah.
But anyway, like I just think with some self-scouting, they'll be down on that a little bit this game. I don't think they'll allow us like the running backs just to catch a billion balls. I just think like that's going to be something of emphasis this week.
We'll see.
Which also does scare me because I don't want to be opening anything up because they've got 3 really good wide receivers. So
yeah.
It's going to be on the defensive line, isn't it? Sorry to just derail everything. But I just feel like this game's going to be all about our defensive line and what they do and what they don't do.
We need Monet to get healthy. That's what we need.
Yeah. So anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
All right. Ross, over under 2.5 targets for the tight ends.
More. Over. More. I speak English.
Yeah, I'll go over as well.
Again, I'm worried that the Seahawks are going to double down and like not commit to what they need to do to win the game, but think what they need to do to establish their offense. I'm worried that they're going to go under 2.5 targets.
You are the negative Nelly this week.
Someone has to be.
Well, I bequeath the title. Okay.
All right. Ross, who's going to have more receiving yards? The combo of Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, or Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen?
Our dudes, because actually it's going to be Osborne who has like the biggest day for them.
Fair enough.
Their rookie wide receiver had like 91 yards last week.
Zeb, what about you?
Yeah, I'll take our guys.
Man, I'm just like being anti everything, you guys. I'm going to say Jefferson and Thielen are because, they're going to be playing catch up, and, that's what they're going to try and do because Seattle's going to commit to the run instead of airing out against a bad secondary.
Do the Seahawks get an interception this week?
I hope so. I mean,
and who gets it?
Kirk Cousins doesn't turn the ball over a ton. He does on the ground, but not in the air.
But can we force an error this week?
I mean, I could see where he like pops a ball up and it gets picked, but I mean, that's maybe more wishful thinking.
I kind of think we're due.
We've been close. We've been really close for sure.
So I'm going to say we get one this week, and it goes to Brooks, who's going to get his first career interception. And it's not like he's awesome in coverage. I think it's just going to be one of those things. The ball just kind of goes up.
Fair enough. Ross, who's going to have more sacks? Our defensive line, our linebackers, or Jamal Adams?
Or Jamal Adams. God, it better be the defensive line. Yeah, defensive line.
Zeb, what about you?
I think we're going to get a big day out of Jamal.
I'm done with that. I'd like to see more Alton Robinson, please. He's been great, and he only had 5 pass rushing attempts in the last game. A lot of that was due to the Titans not allowing Seattle to rotate in their subs. But I'd like to see the defensive line and Alton Robinson get more time. And the last prediction for the night, Ross, are we going to see more passing attempts or more rushing attempts from the Seahawks?
Passing.
Definitely passing.
I've been talking about hammering. I'm worried that they're going to run the ball needlessly, and that's going to be our detriment because Pete's just going to try and keep it close. I'd love to be wrong, but yeah. And that is our predictions for the day. Gentlemen, that is our show, and that means it's time for some shout-outs.
Shout out to my cat, who apparently thinks being fed 4 times a day still isn't enough.
Sounds like a fun life with that cat.
It's all I have, man. It's all I have.
Honestly, shout out to all cats. I love cats.
Nice. Shout out to all cats. That's awesome. I like it.
Yeah.
I'm allergic, so I could take them or leave them. I don't have a cat, so I'm not worried about it. Ross, additional shout-outs other than the cats?
I had one I really wanted to say today, and I've completely forgotten what it was.
All right, we'll have to post it on the forum. We'll post the podcast on the forum. Go to hawkscast.net. Oh, did you remember it?
No.
Okay. We are the hawkscast.net podcast. I am Sam. With me, as always, is Zeb and Ross. Check us out at hawkscast.net. Check us out on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast or Seahawks Forum. Check us out on Twitter. Our handles are all over the place. We're excited for this game. We have high hopes, and we wish you all a Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.